My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I want to be talking about road rage. I think that road rage is a big deal now. I think it's always been a big deal. And it's interesting because with the concept of road rage, the interesting part about it is there's kind of two sides to it, right? There's two sides to the coin. There's two sides to it. There's two sides to understanding what's going on. And there's the side of the person that's the aggressor, that's being aggressive, and the person that's having it happen to them. And it's a very interesting dynamic. And if you look at the news, any of y'all that are listening right now, just check out, go online and Google road rage. You'll see all kinds of stories on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, of things that are happening around the United States. Predominantly is what I'm looking at right now, but I'm sure that it exists around the world. And it's interesting. It's like you just go back a day and there's multiple situations, there's multiple shootings, there's multiple things happening. And so we want to sit there and figure out, what is it about? Why is there road rage? And how is it that we can safeguard ourselves? How can we safeguard ourselves? How can we not fall prey into this on both sides? Because when we have anger, anger is a normal thing to have. We can get angry about things, and I think that many folks have been dealing with anger quite a bit. If we look on the news when it talks about rage on the airline, we see that on a constant basis, right? Where people are getting arrested on the plane, duct taped to their chair. Very interesting dynamic. And that's been going on for a while, but it makes the news now, right? And it's making the news on a daily basis, when that used to be something that was a little more obscure. So I feel like right now we're in a time where there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of anxiety, there's some resentment, there's some anger buildup, there's a lot of things all going on. There's not a lot of places to put it. We have to look at what we're doing with our anger and resentment, but we also have to look at when somebody does come at us with road rage, how do we respond? Because that can be really interesting too, because if you're not prepared for it, you might not be prepared to act a certain way. And that can be very challenging. I remember growing up when I was a lot younger, and I had road rage. I had tendencies of having some road rage. And one of the biggest things, and it wasn't like I started it, it wasn't like, maybe once or twice, right? But most of the time it was the fact that somebody started something with me and I just couldn't let it go. Right? I just couldn't let it go. Somebody cuts in front of you, puts on their brakes to try to get you to hit them, and then, cruises around you, gets behind you, tailing you, causing you to get a little weird, a little stressed that maybe you might get hit, cruising back in front of you, throwing out the bird, yelling and screaming, and all of a sudden it ignites you, right? I'm going to get involved with this. I'm ready. I'm ready to start getting involved with this. And it's an interesting dynamic, right? It's an interesting dynamic to see that and to understand that. And I think that that's something that we really need to look at in today's show, is that we need to understand and see where that's going and why it's happening and why it's worldwide at this point in time. So what I've realized is that, most of the time if somebody is demonstrating road rage, right? They're demonstrating road rage. That's the concept of aggressive behavior. That's from anger. There's impulsivity. There's no thought about what could happen later. Like, what's the outcome of this? When you think about it, like, what's the outcome? There's not like a lot of thought going into, okay, this could happen. This could be the outcome of the situation. And I think in the heat of the moment, a lot of people don't think about it. In the heat of the moment, that anger and resentment that's going on, that anger and resentment that's been having that whole day, that whole week, that whole month, it's like for that moment, it's like they are the king of the road, right? It's like, I'm going to do this. And it was interesting. I was talking to a client earlier today and they said, hey, one of the things that I'm dealing with is road rage. And they said it's hard because when somebody does it to me, though, it's just like I just can't let it go. I just can't let it go. It's like all of a sudden it intensifies, that anger intensifies. I start feeling it. I get ignited. That energy starts, kicking up, and I feel like I can't stop. And I get it, because a lot of times when people do that, we're not prepared for it, right? It's not like you're prepared all the time, every time you get in the car, for a potential of somebody having road rage on you. You're not like thinking that all the time. So they can come out of the middle of nowhere, and it's hard sometimes to safeguard that situation and to safeguard in that situation. That's something that we need to think about. And that's something we're going to talk about here in the show as well. And I think also, too, it's being able to separate ourselves from certain types of people. And I want you to think about that, because road rage is really just another avenue for people to do things that we won't want done to us. It's another thing for people to do things that we don't need to aid and abet on. It's another thing that we don't need to give into. I mean, we don't want to give in to every time the narcissist wants something, right? We don't want to give in to everything anytime the malignant narcissist wants something. We recently just posted on TikTok yesterday. And if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, George is going to add the link to TikTok. So if you're not already following or on TikTok, you can check it out. We talked about malignant narcissists, and, we don't need to give in to the malignant narcissist. We don't want to give in to the malignant narcissist. That's not what we want to do. And I think that a lot of times with road rage, because it happens so quickly and out of the blue, it's something that we inherently give into, right? It's something we inherently give into. We don't plan on it. It takes, it's like our energy is all going to that. We get dedicated to that. We get in this rage. We get in this argument, the thrill of the fight. And I think also, too, the thing is that we're both in vehicles in this situation. So it's not person to person, face to face. We're both in vehicles, which kind of dehumanizes it, if you think about it, right? So the human concept out of it, and, the feeling of having remorse or guilt for hurting someone else or doing that thing kind of gets almost erased, because there you are in cars. It's almost like you're in like an arcade or video game in the sense. And so it's like it dehumanizes the situation. And I think that that's something that we want to look at. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do to safeguard ourselves is to realize that you don't always know what someone's going to do. Whether it's somebody that you personally know, somebody at work, somebody that you just met, interacting with somebody, and I don't want, and this isn't to scare you. I don't believe in scare tactics. I believe that for the most part, the world is a good place. I believe that for the most part, there's good people. Now, do people do bad things? Yes. And do people that are unself-aware do bad things? Yes. But I think the majority of people try to do the best they can. Okay. And so I think that if we think about it from that perspective, we don't go into it with a lot of fear. We can go into it with some sort of truth here. But also, we don't want to be Pollyanna about it. We don't want to sit there and go, oh, everything's just going to be great and awesome. It's going to be wonderful, when it's a possibility of it not. And I think that that's where we need to arm ourselves. Because when we look at these different stories, and I'm looking at 10 or 12, and just, I guess these are all posted within the last day, the last 21 hours. That's a lot. I mean, that's just one page in the last 20-something hours. And that's something that we really need to think about, because there's a lot of involvement. There's some people that are also innocent that are involved, but also it's like, how do we get out of that? And that's what I'm going to be talking about later too, is that sometimes we have to disengage with our energy and direction, and we have to do that in day-to-day life too. I'm sure that there's some people in your life right now that if you actually allowed them to do what they're doing and continue to connect with them and continue to interact with them, you're fueling their fire. You're giving into it, right? You're giving into what they want. Some people just want to start a fight. And I know that you probably know people like that too. I've met people like that where all they want to do is start an argument. They want to start a fight. They want to start something. They want to argue with you about something. And it's, if we give into that energy and we allow them to we allow ourselves, better yet, to engage with them, we're actually fueling what they're wanting to do, right? We're actually saying, hey, you're right, let's go. Okay, I'm ready. And that's where we need to be careful, is that when we open up those floodgates and participate in the concept, we're allowing that to be. And that fundamentally is something that we need to really recognize if that or when that is happening. And one of the things too is that, we need to look at the concept of displacement, because I think nowadays more than ever, because of the stress level, the anxiety, many people working from home and dealing with the stress and anxiety, the family dynamic, which they didn't have to deal with 2 years ago at this level. The impact of financial stress, anxiety. Now we got this entire deal going on with Russia and the Ukraine, and it just continues and continues. And for many of you, you agree. It's like, if it's not this, it's that. If it's not this, it's that. If it's not that, it's those. And, when is it ever going to calm down? And I think that that's something that we need to take into consideration as well. There's so many things happening right now. There's so many things going on that we have to be aware of where our energy is, where our thoughts are, and really understand where we are and how we feel. And the concept of displacement is very interesting because, displacement is like having that anger, and it's toward somebody that right? That we know, but we take it out on someone that we don't know. And sometimes that happens, displacement happens where there's something that happens and you take the anger out on a friend or a spouse or a family member, right? When it has nothing to do with them, it has to do with this other person that is creating the anger and hostility inside of you. And that's something that we need to investigate too. So if we're dealing with road rage, or we're dealing with rage in general, we need to realize and figure out where and what is at the root of our anger. Right? What is at the root of our anger? And this is not a judgment show. This is not about judgment. This is a show that's based on, we just need to get the information and knowledge and figure out how to make our lives happier, healthier, and just more content, right? More content. The contentment thing is the biggest issue. The contentment is what is so important for us to gain. Contentment. Because I think happiness is elusive. Happiness is elusive, because what is happiness? What does it mean to be happy? I think happy is, it's kind of, I don't know, to me, happy is kind of random, because I think happy is misconstrued often. And I think that if we look at contentment and we say, okay, let me replace happy with contentment. Let me replace happy with I'm feeling content. I'm feeling good within my own self. I'm feeling good in my own body. I feel good about what's going on. I feel happy about that thing, as far as I don't feel stressed. I don't feel worried. I feel content. I feel calm, right? And I think calm, and I'm not saying we can't have energy and be happy and, woohoo, this is fun. But I'm saying when we're calm, things are flowing right? When we're calm, we're not angry. We're not freaking out. We're calm. And so we need to really focus on, if we do have anger, and we're going to talk about this more because, we got a short break here coming up, and we're going to talk about this more because we do need to, I think everybody to some degree, even some of the most self-aware people out there, and I'm talking about mucho self-aware, can find themselves displacing anger without realizing, because sometimes we just don't see it. Sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees because we're so close. So stay tuned. When I return, I'm going to be talking more about road rage, the anger, the displacement, how to deal with it if you're a victim of it, how to deal with it if you feel like doing it, and how to stop. We're going to talk about that, so stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Taxes was waiting around for your taxes to be done, which led to worrying about not getting any money back. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes in a day to get you up to $4,000 fast with a refund advance loan. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Expert filing only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Refund advance has $0 loan fees and 0% APR. Refund advance loans may be issued by First Century Bank, N.A. or Web Bank. Terms apply. Subject to approval.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today, I've been talking about road rage, examining it psychologically from all angles to understand why is road rage? Why do we participate? Why do we, antagonize? Why do we continue? Why do we allow someone to railroad our day? And I've had that before, where I'm in a great mood. I'm in a great mood, and going to take care of something real quick, leave the office, and all kinds of stuff happens. And I actually remember the moment where it changed for me. I remember the moment, and I actually remember exactly where I was, and I remember the location of where I was, and I remember everything about that day. And I remember I was going somewhere, and I was stopped, about to make a right to get on the highway, and traffic was coming the way. Anyway, so I finally get on the highway, and someone literally jumps in front of me, puts on their brakes completely. So I almost hit them, which is really, really scary, because the last thing you want to do is hit somebody. And then they cruise around the backside of me, and then they're beeping their horn. And they come around the side, and they're giving me the bird, and they're screaming and yelling. And I remember, every part of me was like, I'm going to get involved with this. I'm going to track this person down. I'm going to follow them down the highway. And it was in that moment, I was like, why am I allowing myself to get all worried? Why am I allowing myself to get all irritated and stressed and overamped, and it's like your blood's boiling and you're just like, and I was like, why am I doing this? And usually in the past, I would have followed that person down the highway, beeping my horn, doing whatever. I mean, I was young, but we do it all. It happens at all ages, right? But I decided in that moment I was going to stay on the service road, and I wasn't going to follow this person. And it was interesting. I remember right when I veered to the right, I could tell that they were looking, and you could tell that there was some anger and upset because I wasn't continuing this. And I realized right then, when I give in to someone else's anger and I give in to someone else's rage, I've given them my power. And you could see from the rearview mirror how upset he was, that he realized that I wasn't following him to continue this chaotic, stupid stuff. And I stayed on the service road, and I drove, and I was like, hey, I'm just going to stay back a few minutes, and then eventually I'll get to where I need to go. And it was interesting because at first it was so different than the irritation. It was so different from the anxiety. The blood wasn't boiling, your heart rate wasn't speeding up. And I just kind of sat there and I said, you know what? I grew up. Because I've realized, okay, I don't want to get involved with this anymore. I don't need to get involved with this anymore. It's like somebody having a temper tantrum with you, right? It's like somebody having a temper tantrum and they go off, an adult having a temper tantrum. And many of you know what I'm talking about. And instead of engaging in that temper tantrum, sometimes it's better just to leave. Why do I have to engage in your bad behavior, right? And why do I need to take it to the next level and entertain it, for God's sakes? And I've realized too, the biggest issue as well is the displacement. So when somebody is raging and they're raging at you and you don't know them, aka somebody that's driving the car with the road rage, at that moment, the rage that they have, they're putting on you from all these people or this situation that they're angry at, and you don't have a face anymore. So the idea of interacting with them is, counterproductive to your value and counterproductive to your safety, right? It's counterproductive. We're not doing what we need to be able to do what's best for us, right? And so that's kind of the deep end of where I want to go, and the deep end of the pool today. This is where I want to go. I want a direction in that because, we can take the road rage and we can talk about that, but it's not just road rage. It's about rage in general and interacting with rage or not interacting with rage, entertaining it, right, or not. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about that when I return. We got a lot coming up here, so don't change the channel. Keep listening here on the radio station you're listening to. And let's find out. Let's really understand that and break that down so we don't get involved with that and we don't lose our energy and time and possibly get hurt in the process. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm talking about anger. I'm talking about displacement, specifically to some specifics. One specific we've been talking about is road rage, but there's a lot of things out there, right? I mean, anger and displacement, I think, happens more than we want to even think about. I mean, how often have you gotten angry about something with somebody and you realize when you look back at it, you got angry with them for something that was actually something you needed to own or something that somebody else had brought into your life? And I feel like we got to get right with that, because I think that there's a tendency of us displacing anger. And when we do that, honestly, like when we do that, the deal is that we're hurting that other person. We're also showing that person that we're not self-aware enough to see that truth. We're pushing that friendship or relationship. And on top of that, we're not dealing with the issue. We're still not dealing with the issue. The issue is not going to go away on its own. So think about that. Is there somebody right now in your life that has created some sort of havoc that you need to have a conversation with? And I didn't use the word confront, right? Because we don't want to. Confrontation is used when it's necessary. I think conversation is a better thing. We can have a conversation with somebody, express our thoughts, right? Express our thoughts. And that's powerful. And I feel like that's a powerful source when we think about it, because if we're able to sit there and say, okay, what is really driving this force? What is really driving this anger? Where is this rage coming from? And taking a moment just to think about it, taking a moment to analyze it. So the next time that you find yourself, I mean, because this can be a learning experience in its own. The next time you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you want to begin some sort of road rage or some sort of rage, ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Where is this energy coming from? You know, I think on the other side of the coin, because I think that can be an eye-opening situation. But on the other side of the coin, when this happens to us or in our general area, because it's not really happening to us, nothing's really happening to us. Yeah, somebody might try to interact with us, right? But unless if we take it on and go, okay, that's what's going on, then here we go. But if we don't take it on and we allow it to be and we just kind of go on our own merry way, even though it might be frustrating or irritating or a little stressful, we allow ourselves to move past that situation. We allow ourselves not to interact with that situation. I think that is so important. I think also each time that you do that, acknowledging the fact that you're doing the right thing. Acknowledging the fact that you've done a good thing in your life, right? I think this is important. We've not acknowledged the fact that we're doing a good thing in our life, acknowledging the fact that we're making moves. And I think that's good, because anytime we have growth, we need to see that growth. Anytime that we are able to not fall into the trap of someone else's rage, anytime that we're able to not fall into the trap of our own rage, right? Everybody can be on both sides of this coin. I mean, every single person on this planet has been on one side or the other at any given time. That's what's so interesting in it. That's what's so interesting. And so it's like, okay, so we've all been there before, but what are some ways that we can change the cycle? Because you know what ultimately happens, and I'm not speaking for everybody. There are some people out there that do not have any self-awareness. There are some people out there that do not have any empathy. More people, though, have empathy than don't have empathy. And so somebody that does have empathy, if they are to use road rage as a way of displacement, what happens after that? Guilt, sadness, feeling bad about oneself, right? I mean, those are the interesting things, is that, you know, a person that has empathy, a person that has the ability to see that other people have feelings. You feel bad, you feel sad, you feel guilty, you feel shame. And guilt and shame are not good energy creators, right? They're just not. They're not good energy, creators. As far as if I'm feeling guilt and shame, I'm not focusing on what I need to focus on. If I'm feeling guilt and shame, I'm beating myself up. So not only did I just go through this situation with this road rage because I'm displacing my anger from somebody else, not only is that all happening, but now I feel really, 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 really guilt and shameful because I did this to this person and I can't really go back and apologize because I don't even know who it is. I mean, it's just a cycle. And yes, I agree with you. There are some people out there that don't have empathy. But we're talking about right now in this moment, folks that do. And so that guilt and shame. Now, on the other side, when somebody is displacing their anger on you, and you happen to be the person that happened to be on the highway at the exact moment they are, and this begins to happen, how does it go? And it was interesting. Years ago, I was on a flight. This isn't road rage, but this is airline rage. Airline rage and road rage are the same thing. But the interesting thing about the airline is that you're not in a vehicle, right? So there is human contact, which is very interesting. But you're off the ground, right? So there's some sort of like, oh, this is allowed because we're not on the ground, right? So there's all these different levels of thought processes that go through people's minds subconsciously, right? But I remember I was on this flight. And it was the wildest thing. I'm on this flight, and I sit down, and I had back surgery a few years back, and my back had, it was just challenging, and I was, just a lot of pain all the time. So I sit down on the chair, and everything's fine, and then we're about to take off, and I remember as we're about to take off, I'm feeling just like some major kicking in the back of my chair, just kick, and I went, you know what? It's okay. I have a child behind me. I'm going to just deal with it. And as we take off and as we get there, everything's going to be fine. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. The child's going to calm down. Maybe they're stressed out about the flight. I created all kinds of stories in my head to validate the situation without turning around and just having a yelling match with this person behind me. I was like, I know it's a child. So as we're taking off, the kicking begins to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And now it's in the middle of my back. So now it's like, how are you doing it? Like you're kicking the tray table at this point in the middle of my back. And, quite honestly, anybody that's had back pain, back surgery, you know how scary that kind of stuff is. It's not fun and games. It's not funny. Your life, your life is flashing in front of your very eyes as far as your health perspective. And it's scary. And so I remember I looked through the crack to try to see the two chairs to the left of the person behind me. I'm sitting in the aisle seat. I look behind me, through the crack between the chairs, and I see two adults, one sitting by the window and one sitting in the middle seat. So I said, okay, so the kid has got to be sitting in the aisle, but I couldn't see the person. And as we end up, we've taken off, and now we've kind of leveled off. And it stopped for a second, and then all of a sudden the kicking started again and again and again, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse. So finally I turn around to my left to look at the chair behind me, and it's not a kid. It's not a kid at all. This is probably, I would say she was probably in her mid to late 50s. Okay? And I looked and I saw her, and then I was thinking I'm bamboozled, and I look at the other two chairs again. So there's three adults sitting there. She's an adult. She's sitting there. And I looked and I said, hi. I said, excuse me. I said, is everything okay here? And she said, everything's fine. And I just remember I went, oh, okay. And so I turned back around and she started kicking again, harder and harder and harder and harder. And it just kept on going. And I turned around and I said, hey, are you okay? Do I know you from somewhere? No, you don't know me. And I said, have I done anything to upset you? And she said, no. And I said, okay. So I turned back around. She starts again. And I said, hey, why are you kicking me? She's like, I've been trying to get your attention. There were multiple, 4-letter words used since the time we got here. I don't like you. So the argument starts. I'm completely mesmerized with the fact that this person's trying to start a fight with me on the plane. And I remember she got out of her seat, and next thing you know, she's standing over me, and I'm dealing with all this stuff. And it was interesting. I didn't know what to say, and the only thing that actually eventually came out of my mouth was "God bless you." And the only reason that came out of my mouth was some sort of serendipitous situation. And all of a sudden, she got back in her seat, stopped. And about 20 minutes later, she was passed out. So what had happened is she had gotten very drunk on before the flight, probably. There was a lot of anger and resentment building up towards somebody, some displacement. And then she was going to take it out in the friendly skies with me. And I've been there before where you're just like, well, what's going on here? But there was no way of winning that. I'm not going to get in a fight on a flight. I'm not going to get in a fight. I don't want to fight anybody. I'm not going to sit there and somebody else's rage cause me to get in trouble. Somebody else's rage cause me to get hurt. Because you just don't know sometimes with these folks, right? I mean, when you look at the road rage thing, people getting punched and shot at and all this stuff. So it's like, what do we do? So when you think about the concepts of how we get ourselves out of something, because there's a ways of getting ourselves out of things. There's ways of taking a moment. We don't have to engage. We don't have to engage. And I really want you to think about that. There's always another way. Somebody that wants to start a fight is going to try to engage you at all costs because that is what they want. I want you to engage with me and have a fight because that's what I want. That's what I want right now. That's what I need right now. That is what I want. You will give me what I want, which ultimately is a power play, right? Which ultimately is a power play. So if we allow someone to power play us in, strong arm us in, right, into doing what they want us to do, we have essentially given away our freedoms and our powers to someone that we don't even know. Seriously. So I want you to think about that. And this is across the board. This isn't just road rage or plane rage or airline rage. This is about everything. Anytime that somebody comes to you displacing their anger towards you, you have the ability to walk away. Because quite honestly, I'm not cool with giving away my freedoms to somebody. I'm not cool with that. I'm not going to accept that reality. Because that's what they want. It would be different if somebody came to you and said, hey, I've had a really tough day and I'm really trying to process the anger and resentment that I have towards so-and-so. Is there any way that you can give me some advice? That's a totally different situation. But in the process, here we are in this situation where there's anger. This person has an inability or non-desire to self-soothe. They're wanting to start a fight. They're looking for someone to engage in. Another thing, too, that I've realized with displacement is that when people displace and we cater to that displacement, it continues to create that, right? So there's an entitlement, right? There's an entitlement that I'm allowed to do this. Because remember, think about how many people do you know that create all kinds of fights and arguments, and it's almost like people placate them, right? And then it comes to you, and they just think that you're just going to placate them, too. And it's like, that is not acceptable behavior. That is not acceptable behavior. I mean, I can see a temper tantrum from a 5-year-old, but not from a 50-year-old. That's not cool. It doesn't look good. And I think that there's a level of maturity. But I think there's a lot of folks out there that what's happened is we've catered to their displacement, right? So when we cater to their displacement, we allow them to continue to displace. So we're actually saying, yeah, you're right. The anger is with me. You are so right. I am the reason for your pain. Let me bring, you are my cross to bear. Hell no. But see what happens when we allow displacement in our life. We allow someone to displace. We act on it. We jump to it, right? All of a sudden, we're basically saying, yeah, I'm engaged and I'm totally on board with whatever it is that you're displacing on me at this moment. I'm picking up what you're putting down. And everybody's been doing that for so long, right? Everybody's been doing that for so long that it's par for the course. Anytime they had a temper tantrum when they were growing up, Somebody was there to cater to them. Every time when they got older, somebody was there to take it. Somebody was there to fight with them. Somebody was there to argue with them. Somebody was there to do that. But what I've realized is that we can't teach people anything if we don't do what we need to do. And so this is a boundary. And for many of you out there, you know that I talk about boundaries a lot. I have that book out, The 10-Day Challenge to Live Your True Life. And to take it a step further, the masterclass, which is really cool because there's like lots of video content and it's really cool. It's just videos and it's all about taking that a step further. But the boundaries are so important, the values that we represent and the things that we deal with. And some things we can deal with and some things it's not mine to take. It's not my cross to bear. It's not my burden. But I've also realized that we do people a disservice by allowing them to believe falsehoods about their anger displacement. Right? So it's a falsehood about their anger displacement. And it's very important because I want you to think about this. When it comes to your spouse, significant other, friend, family, let's look at this. Are we allowing someone to do that? When I return, I'll be talking more about that, ways of examining that, and a couple of ideas, or hopefully maybe I'll come up with a nugget of information of some sort. We'll see how that goes. So maybe there's a possible nugget, but either way, stay tuned. We got a few minutes left. Don't turn the channel. Stay with us. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been talking about rage, about the falsehood of rage displacement. It's very important. We have that tendency of that falsehood of rage displacement based on the fact that we allow somebody to displace their rage on us. And that's why road rage is an example, right? Because the whole show is not really about road rage, but it's about the example of the displacement. Airline rage, another example. General fights, others examples. When even a good example is when you come home and you're in a good mood and somebody wants to fight with you. Do we take it on? Do we tackle it? Or do we move on? Do we accept that reality? Or do we say, hey, you know what? I know that you're going through a lot of things. I know you're dealing with a lot of things. All that kind of stuff. And I think that that's important. And I feel like we have to sit there and say, what am I willing to do and what am I willing to not do? What am I willing to take on and what am I willing to not take on? And I think that's so important when we're dealing with anybody. And I know that some folks, when it comes to the spousal dynamic, when it comes to the family-parent dynamic, it's very hard to not pick that up. We feel as though we might have to. And most of us, we don't even realize it. We go on autopilot. Oh, mom's angry again. You gotta calm down. Whatever we get into, or we escalate it, and it just keeps going. And it's interesting because we can let it go. We can actually let it go if we want, but we have to change that program. Because the program is so inundated in us. The program is so inundated based on the concept, right? It's so inundated based on the concept that we believed it for so long because it was presented to us at such a young age that this is the way that we do it. It's presented to us. And I think, honestly, if we look at it and we start really doing our due diligence, we need to make sure that there is no anger and resentment in our camp. Once we eliminate anger and resentment from ourselves internally, usually we don't respond back in kind. Because remember, when somebody's responding that way to us, we respond back in kind because maybe we're angry, but also remember, we feel like we're being disrespected. So that's a whole nother layer of stuff that we have to kind of think about as well. And so I want to leave you with some thoughts here today. And, I want you to think about this and we can go from there. But I want you to think about that. Is there a way to really analyze if we are angry or we feel upset or we feel irritated? Irritation is one of the big triggers that something is off. If I'm feeling irritated, If I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling on edge, right? That means that there's something triggering me. These triggers, there's something that's upsetting me. And these indications, right, are very important. So the indications, the anger, all those pieces are indications that something is really bugging us that we have to analyze and try to figure out what that is. And this is very cathartic and very therapeutic if we work on it right. So this is all we want to do, is we want to be able to see that. If we do get connected with someone else's rage, we need to stop as soon as we can. And this takes time. It takes work. What happens a lot of times when we become self-aware of these things, it takes a little bit of time. So somebody might be going off and you catch yourself, starting to, escalate. And it's like, whoa, wait a second. I got to step back emotionally, step back physically. And why am I doing this? Why am I increasing my stress level? Why am I increasing my heart rate? Why am I increasing my cortisol level? Why? Why in God's green creation? Hey, I know that you're upset and angry. If we can calm down and talk about this in a calm manner, I will be helpful to talk with you. Otherwise, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to come back and let me know when you've calmed down and we can talk together through this. And those are important things, and I want us to think about that. In the meantime, if you haven't already, check out the YouTube channel. If you're here on Facebook watching the radio show instead of listening on the radio, check out the YouTube channel. Also, check out our new TikTok, and we're having a lot of fun with that, so that's always a good thing. We also have a new membership site on the website. So if you just go to ashleyburgess.com, ashleyberges.com, you click on that top banner, and you can join for free. If you want exclusive content that's not anywhere else, it's like a couple of dollars a month, a few dollars a month actually. And then also you will be notified of all events that we have. And it's great because we can actually do Zoom calls, and we actually have options for monthly coaching sessions, which are fun, and all kinds of stuff and all kinds of events that we don't have access to be able to put anywhere else. So that's going to be fun. So we just started that just a couple of days ago. So in the meantime, be able to see your awareness. Don't get taken over by them. Keep your power, and ultimately be there and see your value, that's the ultimate reason. So stay tuned. I'll be back next week. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.